Do you have arguments in your marriage and you think they're normal? Well, my question is, and this is the question that I often ask my clients, is that no matter what everybody tells you, do you like the arguments in your marriage? And they say, of course not. If you're one of those people who don't like arguments in their marriage, then I have 3 tips for you. Hi, my name is Valerian and I help my clients to make their marriage awesome. And one of the unique ways that I help them is to transform their marriage single-handedly without their partner coming for any sort of professional help. Arguments and marriage seem synonymous. Of course, because we look around, we see marriages, and in every marriage we see arguments. We saw our parents arguing and we thought that that's normal. And then we get married, and when we get married, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We also start arguing. And probably you would be saying to yourself that you don't need a lot of tips. The simple tip for stopping arguments or reducing arguments is keep quiet. Well, if you're one of those people who think like this, then you are wrong. Because many a times when I talk to my clients, they say that initially when we had arguments, I thought that why should we have the fight? So I kept quiet. But today, this is where we are, absolutely disconnected, and we live in the house like roommates. And I'm sure that's not the way you want your marriage to go. So here are those 3 important tips. The first tip: understand that disconnect is part of marriage, not necessarily arguments. If you understand how a marriage gets formed, there are 4 stages a marriage goes through. And these are the stages. I've taken it from a very famous personality called Tuckman. And Tuckman talks about the 4 stages of team building, or the 4 stages through which a team goes. So the first step of this process of team building, because marriage is a team, ultimately you and I have to become we. So the first stage of this process is what they call it as forming. It is a time of romance. It is a time of being nice to each other, because at this stage people are generally cautious of what they say, what they react, how they react, because this is where people want to be nice to each other. And the stress in the relationship is relatively low. Think about if your marriage was a love marriage, think about the time before marriage. It's called forming. The next stage is called storming. It's like 2 people who are coming closer and trying to be a team. And when you come closer, you get to see the finer details about the other person. Once you get married, you get to know the nuances, the typical behaviors, the things that the other person does that you really don't like, the aspects about cleanliness, the aspects about the other person's behavior. Now, it just means that you have come closer, and that's the second stage. It's called storming. In other words, fights. Now, this stage is an important stage, and many a times couples get stuck at storming. And when I say storming, I don't only mean arguments. I also mean one partner trying to correct the other partner, and the other partner, for the sake of peace, keeping quiet. Even that's an argument, where one person is using words and the other person is using behavior to communicate. Basically, there is disconnection. If a couple has to go to the next stage of coming closer, people have to understand the fights. People have to realize, you have to realize, if you want to go to the next stage, you have to realize that fights are normal, or storming is normal, but the storming doesn't have to end up in arguments. Storming basically means that there's a difference between you and me. The way I think is different from the way you think. At this stage, If we learn the skills of relationship science, we'll be able to sit down and talk, because it's not very easy. If you don't have the skills, you think people in marriage have not tried to sit with each other and try to talk? Have you not done the same? Maybe after a fight, you told your spouse, let's talk about what happened yesterday. And when you started talking about it, you ended up in one more fight. Now that's what happens when you don't have the skills. So the second stage is storming. And the third stage, and in this stage, you need skills to connect again. And the third stage is called norming. Norming is where I realize that these are the nuances of this person. These are the so-called weaknesses of this person, and I'm going to accept them. And the other person says, okay, and we are going to make certain adjustments. And when I make the rice, you make the vegetables. That's how the whole dynamics goes on. And that's called norming. We set norms. I understand your hurts, I understand your feelings, and I'm willing to change. You understand my feelings, you understand my struggles, and you are willing to change. And on those places where I am finding it difficult to change, you're going to adapt, and vice versa. And the last stage is called performing. Performing is the couple is so much in sync with each other that now they can focus on other things. They can focus on bringing out the best in different aspects of life, with regard to children, with regard to money, with regard to health, with regard to the house. They can focus on things outside because they feel safe in the relationship. So the first step is to focus on resolving the storming part. The focus is to move from storming to norming, from just disconnections and disconnections to disconnection to connection. The second tip, stop criticizing and stop defending. What happens is in the storming stage, as I said earlier, we start coming closer to each other. And as we start coming closer to each other, we start seeing those things that we had missed out or overlooked during the forming stage. And one of the partners takes up the role of correcting the other. And the other partner, for the sake of peace, keeps quiet. And the other partner turns to the first partner and starts criticizing him. So either ways, there is a disconnect. So the next step is to stop criticizing. Instead of that, though you might call it as correction, though you might say that my spouse doesn't understand, I've told him so many times, but when you try to fix the other person, you're making the relationship only worse. And if you're a second kind of person who keeps quiet, it's important for you to open up your mouth and tell what you're feeling in a calm, relaxed voice. That's very important. Calm, relaxed voice. The third insight is both of you are right most of the time. I want you to look at these two pictures. Here's the first picture with so many squares. And as you're looking at it, my question is, how many squares are there? This is the picture. These are the two pictures. I'm going to show you the second one little later. These are the two pictures that I generally show it to my participants whenever I do a conflict management workshop. And in this workshop, when I show this, I ask them how many squares are there, and people give me different answers. Somebody says 12, somebody says 16, somebody says 24, somebody says 32, and sometimes people give the right answer saying 40. Then I ask people to come to the screen and I ask them to show. And then everybody settles that there are 40 squares. Then I ask the group, do you agree with it? And everybody says yes. Then I show them the second picture, this drawing. And then I ask them, who's right? And they say both of them are right. Now let's come back to our lives. The first picture or the first type of argument is called logical conflict. It basically means that when we argue about that thing, at the end of it, we can prove that I am right and you are wrong. Let's say if I say that the president of our country at present is Abdul Kalam. You might be saying, stupid, no, that's not true. Can you prove it to me? Of course you can prove it to me. Now that's the first kind of fight, where there is an answer and the conflict is resolved. Now the second kind of conflicts is where both of us are right. If the other person was wrong, we could have proven to that person using Google, using history books, we could have proven to that person, but we can't. So the other person is right even there. So if the other person was not right, the other person wouldn't have argued, because the other person is not so dumb. You have married somebody who is intelligent. So when conflicts happen, the second type of conflict happen, the point is not about you are wrong and I am right. That's not the argument. The argument, that's not the point. The point is, tell me how you are right, and then I'll tell you how I am right. And now both of us have got the fuller picture now. Now we can resolve, now we can decide what has to be done. I often do this where I call one person and ask him to stand on the other side, and I stand on this side, and in between us there is a 6 drawn, and I ask the person, what do you see? He says 6. I say, I see 9. And then I stretch my hand out and stand as if I'm going to pull his hand, something like this. And automatically, without thinking, he starts pulling my hand. He's pulling my hand, I'm pulling him. And then I stop and I ask the participants, do you notice what has happened? And they say yes. And then I ask them, then I ask this person, this participant who has volunteers, I ask him, tell me, did I ask you to pull me? He says, no. Then why did you pull me? He says that because you started pulling. Now that's exactly what happens when we have an argument. When I try to prove my point, when I try to pull that person to my side and show that person that this is what I think it is, the other person is going to pull me to her side. So the tip to remember is both of us are right most of the time. And if both of us are right, let me hear you first. Tell me why you are right. In fact, I stop pulling that person and I tell the person, okay, I'm not going to pull you. I'm going to come to your side. I know you're saying it's a 6, so show me how it is a 6. So I go to that person's side. He says, okay, it starts from here and this is a line. And I say, that's great. Would you like to come to my side and see the 9? The person says, yeah. And the person comes to my side. Now that's exactly happens in a relationship. So the third tip, always remember to listen first, then explain. To summarize, here are those 3 points. The first one is there are 4 stages of team building, or 4 stages of marriage: forming, storming, norming, and performing. When the storming, after forming, there's a storming stage, and because there's a storming stage, we got to get comfortable with the storming stage and make sure that the storming stage, we don't get stuck at the storming stage, we move forward. The second tip is stop correcting if you are taken up that role of correcting, and stop defending if you have taken up that role of defending. The third tip is both of you are right almost all the time. And if both of us are right, both of you are right, then it's better to find out how we are right and always start with the other person. So that's all for today's video. We're going to connect again in the next video. And before I end this video, I just want to know whether you have subscribed for this channel. If you have not done so, do it right away. Because I know for you, your marriage matters. And for people like you, I put up videos every week. And also don't forget to share these videos with people like you, because there is a lot of suffering, relationship suffering that's going on in the world, and you can make a difference in somebody's life by sharing this video. Thank you very much. And until we connect again, make sure you do everything possible to keep your love story alive. And when I say love story, I'm talking about your love story with yourself, with your spouse, with everybody around, and the whole of nature. Thank you very much.